What in the world just happened? It's been a bizarre 24 hours for Milan, but this deal collapsing the way that it has maybe was expected. This is what I said in the previous video. When a club like Leverkusen loses this many pieces in one window, why would they then also be open to letting go of Boniface? The fact that they're letting him go could make it a little bit fishy for Milan. That why are they letting him go if he's a good player? And from the looks of it, that's why they're letting him go. The guy had serious injury issues, but isn't this something that Milan was already aware of? That's what we're going to discuss in today's video. We're also going to touch up on the last match against Cremonese. I wasn't able to make a 4 takeaways video, but I did do a live stream. I was away with the family for the weekend, but now that this Boniface deal has collapsed, I guess we might as well talk about 2 unfortunate things that have happened. Now, before I kick things off, I do want to give a special shout out to Michael Andreozzi. Michael was kind enough, generous enough to give a donation in yesterday's live stream, but the moment that his donation came in is the moment that I shut off the stream. So I'm sorry, my friend, I wasn't able to acknowledge that, but I wanted to make sure I acknowledge that in today's video. Thank you so much for your kindness and your generosity, and I appreciate it big time. Now, the other thing that also happened in yesterday's live stream was a lot of questions coming from the viewers about why is the Boniface medical taking so long? Why hasn't this deal gotten firmed up? And there was a little bit of a doubt, a cloud of suspicion as to what exactly is happening behind the scenes. What was being reported that because Milan was aware of his injury history, they did have a specialized, potentially a specialized medical that they were going to go through. There was going to be a 2-part medical just to make sure that the player's fitness was going to be something that is worth investing into. And I guess they took their time to do that, but news started to trickle out this morning that he had actually failed his medical. And for that reason, the Rossoneri management was left to make a decision. They needed to figure out, are they okay taking on a player that has the potential risk of getting injured? Or is the risk so severe and the probability of getting re-injured so high that, it won't be an investment that is worth it? The solution that we actually talked about in the previous video was exactly this, that, okay, you know what? He does have an injury past. We're all aware of that, but at least we're just going to bring him out on loan. It's a loan. It's not a 40 million, 50 million euro deal. You test him out for a year. If he performs good, if he gets injured, you just send him back at the end of the year. But I think at this point in time, possibly Milan wants a bit more of a sure bet. They don't want there's a lot of people who talk about it in football. It's a common phrase in sports in general. The best ability is availability. If he's not going to be available, if he's going to be on the bench a lot of the times, then what's the player worth? Now, this is not the first time that a situation like this has unfolded. In the past, years ago, some of you guys may have not even been a Milan fan back then, there was a player by the name of Ali Sissoko. He used to play for Liverpool. Milan, under Silvio Berlusconi, Adriano Galliani, did sign him on. He went through his medical, and then there was some reasoning that was reported that, oh, you know what? He failed a dental exam in his medical. And due to that dental issue, there's potential that it can cause cardiac issues. And for that reason, Milan said, you know what? We actually don't want this player anymore. What came out later in certain reports was that the management just decided they don't want to invest in that player. The ownership decided that they don't want to free up the funds for the management to be able to spend on him, and that's why they just held back. So over 10 years after this situation happened in Milan's past, it has happened once again, but this one's way more dramatic. And it's way more dramatic for a very specific reason, that we were pretty much aware of these injury issues. This player picked up this injury during his days at Bodo Glimt. Then he joined Bayer Leverkusen. He won a title with them. He scored a bunch of goals for them. And so they did go through that period of taking a chance on that injury, and he did give them, some dividends. What we have to keep in mind is that the seasons that he has played for Leverkusen, he's been injured in both of them. The first season where he won the Bundesliga title, a lot of people remember his goal scoring output. I think 34 games, 31 goal contributions, I believe 21 goals and 10 assists. What they forget is that during a consequential period of 2 months, I think sometime around February, March, he missed out 2 months of football. Last season again, he missed half the season through an injury issue. So we were already aware that the guy had injury problems. So what exactly came out to be different? Because what some reporting is suggesting is that there's actually nothing that Milan found in his medical that they didn't already know. Well, now, if we already knew that, then why do we go through the whole process of bringing him here and, agreeing to a certain fee and a certain buyout fee if we're already aware of it? The only thing that I could say is that maybe they didn't understand the severity of the issue. That's the only logical explanation. There's a second logical explanation too. We're going to talk about that. But the one logical explanation is that, they maybe thought that, okay, this is a 4 out of 10 injury issue. This is 4 out of 10 bad. But when they ran his medicals, they probably realized, you know what, this is actually a 6.5 out of 10 bad. This is going to be a recurring problem for us. If it was a 4 out of 10 bad, we were willing to take a chance on a loan. But at this point, there's a very good chance he's going to re-injure himself again. Obviously, this is an assumption. We're going to have to see how Boniface's season even goes. For all we know, maybe he'll have no injuries this season, but Milan can only evaluate his medical based on what they can actually see in the scans. So it could have been a matter of, severity. They had to see the severity of it and they felt like it was too much. There was a report that came out that Allegri was at Casa Milan, meeting with the management for hours to actually discuss the potential of actually agreeing to this deal or letting the player go. Because once the medical happened and Milan saw the issues that he had, they then had the time to decide if they wanted to actually still go through with the deal or send him back to Germany. And I think that's the second part that I'm talking about. There could be two reasons. I guess the second reason really would be that you can't, some people are saying, why did they go through this entire process if they already knew about the injury? Probably because you kind of have to. You cannot just go to Germany and say, hey, Bayer Leverkusen, this player of yours, Boniface, we're going to take him to the medical center. Just run a few tests on him. Is that okay? They can't do that. They have to go through the process of actually making an offer to buy the player. They have to go through the process of negotiating on that price. They have to go through the process of agreeing personal terms with the player. Only then can you bring an asset that is owned by another club to your side and then run those tests on him. You can just randomly start picking out players from different clubs and just run medical tests on them. So I guess that was really the reason why they had to go through the whole process. They probably realized that the Højlund deal wasn't getting done. The Vlahovic demands weren't coming down. And this was the option that was left. There was risk, but if they possibly negotiated on a decent deal, brought him here, ran medicals, and realized that it's not as bad and they're willing to take a chance on him, then they would be their newest signing. And if they run the medical and see it's too bad, they'll just send him back and work on other options. And eventually when that happened, they realized that he was, I guess, too broken for them to invest in. I think the frustrating part for a lot of Milan fans doesn't really come from this Boniface deal. I think if it happened under a positive environment, I think this would be a situation that fans would appreciate and say, you know what, the club's watching out. They don't want to take a chance on a player. But I think it's because Milan finished in 8th place last season, there's been so much chopping and changing of players. And we saw how the first game of the season turned out. There's more of a frustration as to why this Boniface situation even happened and why so much time was actually invested in the process with it not working out in our favor. So at this point in time, Bayer Leverkusen's management even came out and said that there's no chance of renegotiating any new deal. I don't think that's because Milan wants the player for a lower price. I just don't think Milan's going to take the chance on putting money into the player anyways. So the deal is dead. The player's gone back to Germany, and I guess we're going to have to wait to see how the season actually unfolds. I think a lot of Milan fans will keep an eye on it. But at this point in time, I think it's more worth it to actually discuss our own problems, not really about what Boniface's season will be like, but what ours is going to be like, because the season opener, that was not good. I think I'm going to have to break this down a little bit. First of all, there are a lot of people who have been making some comments about the fact that, hey, you know what, I can't wait to see how Kush is going to explain this away and say it's okay, it's okay. I don't think this is okay. Go watch my live stream from yesterday. I never accepted this to be an acceptable result. This is not acceptable. I understand it's a new team. I understand it's a new coach. I understand there's a lot of new players that have come in. The system is slowly going to change. It's going to take some time, but you don't lose the season opener at home against a newly promoted side who hasn't beaten you in 100 years. 100 years, guys. You can't lose to them. And I'll never explain that away. That is something that the team has to own, learn from, and move forward from as fast as possible. No runway. You got to take off and make the results happen the next game onwards. Now, to bring a little bit more calmness to the entire situation, what I would say is this. A few pointers. First of all, as I said, it's a new team, new coach, new system. It's going to take time to gel. No matter how impatient or patient we are, that process has to unfold on its own time. What I can say is that, and I'm not trying to claim that Milan are Scudetto favorites. I've never tried to claim that. I don't really, quite honestly, at this point in time, I don't even believe that. The first game of the season didn't give me any type of an assurance that maybe there's a possibility of that. But what I can say is that last season, Napoli, in their opening match of the season, lost 3-0. 3-0 against Hellas Verona, so they did not hit the ground running from game one. For me, that is not necessarily a justification that, oh, you know what, Napoli lost 3-0 in the opener, so it's okay if we lost 2. No, it's still not acceptable. But what I'm trying to do is set a little bit of perspective. But I think what frustrates fans, and what actually frustrated me too, is that, you know, a lot of you guys, someone in the comments even mentioned it, it didn't feel like match day 1 from 2025-26. It felt like match day 39 from 2024-25 season. And I think that's what frustrated a lot of fans, and that is what frustrated me too. The mistakes that Milan made with the 2 goals conceded, we saw them make those same mistakes last season, and probably the season before that too. The mistakes or the inefficiency that we saw from them in attack is a very similar inefficiency that we saw from them last season. So it isn't the fact that they lost the opening match of the season. It is the fact that we feel like nothing seemed different. You were hoping with the new signings coming in, with the new coach coming in, new sporting director coming in, that something's gonna change, but it felt a bit like the same old. With all these changes of coach, director, players, you feel like it's gonna be a new dawn. It's gonna be a new start. But it felt like the same drag from last season. And I think that is a very fair criticism from fans about the opening day. We still have a long season to go, but very quickly there's a demand to see some type of a positive change come out here. Now, the player that does look like he's going to be joining the club is Conrad Harder. I did mention him a little bit in the live stream. I talked about him a little bit as well in the previous video. I think for now, my opinion is fairly similar to what it was before. I think this is a product of Milan's scouting department. I think this is a find for them. At least that's the sense that I can get, because his numbers, they just don't scream a player that's going to revolutionize your attack necessarily at this point in time, because I think he's only had 1 season where he scored more than 10 goals. I believe last season he had about 11 goals. So he's not that player, that profile that the club has been searching for, who's going to give you outright 20 goals. What I've heard about him is the fact that he was playing as a backup player, or he would play alongside Viktor Gyökeres before his move to Arsenal. I find it interesting that the same Mercato that they've actually sold him, they're also willing to let go of his backup, or the player that used to play with him. He did have a release clause of 80 million euros is what I read. And the fact that Milan can now agree a deal for 27 million euros, I already find that odd. That last year, 1 year ago, his release clause was 80 million, and now they're letting him go up for 27 million. I don't want to say too much about the player because I haven't seen him play live. I haven't seen, a lot of his matches. I've only seen his highlights at this point in time. So for the entire situation, we're going to have to wait to see how the player actually performs with the club, but it does look like this is the profile for now that the club is actually going with, and they're potentially going to sign another striker, I believe, closer to the end of the Mercato. And I think Vlahovic is probably going to be one of those profiles they're going to be keeping their tabs on as to what last minute deal can they score for him. Because in my opinion, Santi Gimenez and Conrad Harder, I just don't know if, for now, I just don't know if that's enough if you really want to make a case for a top 3, top 2 finish. We have a week to go on the transfer window. We're going to have to see what kind of additions and maybe some subtractions the club is going to make. But that match against Lecce, away from home, it must result in 3 points for the club. And you guys let me know in the comment section how you feel about this whole Boniface situation, how it unfolded, and if the issues that the player actually had were similar to what Milan was already aware of. Should we still have gone through with the deal and given the guy a year to see what he could do here? Make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, like this video, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter at FootballKush, and as always from my side, Forza Milan, grazie mille, ciao tutti. This is style of play and the scandals. Oh, the scandals, including a bizarre locker room incident where a player essentially drugged his own teammates. And we'll look at how lowering Serie A from 20 teams to 18 teams might be the